80% of the guys that come to us are coming to us from other areas because they're being encouraged and supported to, which means, blokes, we need a kick in the pants to actually get off our ass and go and do something that is ultimately good for us. We know will improve not just our physical and mental health, but will make us feel more connected, more supported, prevent us from dropping down as far if we are better supported and we have that safety net. To the women listening, thank you.
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Your Second Act. Hope you're all having a great week and making the most out of your every single day, because let's face it, life just goes so fast, and I don't know about you, but this year is flying by. So I'm trying to be really mindful about really trying to stay in the present, in the moment. We're so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think this year that's my mantra, is to try and really make the most of each day. And today I am speaking to another amazing guest, but this time it's not a female, it's a male. He's my third guest. Now, you know that my podcast is all about helping you become the best version of yourself through hearing other people's stories. And sometimes that means really digging in deep and then allowing yourself to be vulnerable. As women, we often find comfort in opening up with friends, sharing our worries, and leaning on each other for support. But what happens to the men in our lives, our husbands, our partners, our fathers, when they reach midlife and start questioning how to navigate this stage of life? The reality is, while we tend to talk through our struggles, many men find it incredibly difficult to do the same. Instead of reaching out, they bottle things up, often struggling in silence. And this can lead to serious mental health challenges, impacting not only them, but also their families and their relationship. Now, today's guest, Tim Hewson, knows this struggle all too well. He spent 20 years hiding his own mental health challenges, pushing through with the suck it up mentality. And it wasn't until his separation in his early 40s that he realized just how isolated he was. He had no strong male support network to turn to, and it was a real wake up call that led him to build Mongrels Men, a community and now an award winning charity designed to help men connect, support each other, and have the kinds of conversations that can be truly life changing. Tim's work is impacting thousands of men each year, proving that when given the right space and support, men can open up and find strength in vulnerability. In today's conversation, we'll dive into his journey, the stigma around men's mental health, and how we can all play a role in supporting the men in our lives. In my 54 years, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen a man cry. And that alone should be a wake up call. It's not that men don't struggle, it's that they've been taught to hide it and to push through in silence. And that's why when I came across Mongrels Men, the charity you founded, I was immediately drawn to it. Finally, I felt a space where men can be seen, heard, and supported, a place where vulnerability is met with strength and not shame. And Tim, you know better than anyone else what it's like to carry the weight alone. So, what made you realize something had to change, not just for you, but for men as well?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for having me on the Second Act podcast. A great opportunity for me to have a conversation, not just with you, but with your audience around men being a man, masculinity, and mental health. There's probably no single one thing that fundamentally changed my thinking, my approach, or got me to where I am. There's all of these little breadcrumbs of things that have happened, whether it's to me or around me, that got me to starting a men's community, to evolving that into a men's charity, and then leaving corporate after 27 years to actually focus on mental health more broadly. Maybe let's start 2014, right? I'm standing on the sidelines, watching my eldest son run up and down the field playing soccer with this huge smile on his face. And I realized just not only how much fun he was having chasing a soccer ball around with his mates every weekend, but that he and my wife at the time had all of these social connections, these friendship groups through sports and community initiatives that they had to rely upon, to play with for my kids, to reach out to for support. And I didn't. And the idea of having fun, running around, chasing a ball for me was in that moment really, really appealing. But it was also a light bulb moment to say, I actually don't have any support networks like this. So I turned to one of the other dads on the sidelines and said, why aren't we doing this? The kids are having so much fun. And he said, you're absolutely right. Let's do it. And in 2014, we started a middle-aged men's football team. A few years after that, we're now in 2018, and I was the team manager. You know, for me, I was one of the oldest players on the team. Managing a team was a great way to not only guarantee myself some time on the field, but I think secretly between you and me and anybody else that's listening, you know, washing filthy, sweaty bibs, cutting oranges and herding middle-aged blokes like cats is probably my love language, right? It's what I enjoy doing. But after organising the end of season victory event, and we'd had a great season, one of the guys came up to me and he said, Timbo, thanks for organising for tonight, for me to turn up to training and the games every weekend. And I made a joke about being the oldest player and how much I enjoyed washing those sweaty bibs. And he said, no, seriously, if you didn't organise for me to turn up to training, you didn't make sure I get picked up and delivered to the games, and I didn't have the support of these blokes, I wouldn't be here. And those words rattled around in the back of my brain all night. And by the time I woke up the next morning, they hit me like a sledgehammer.
Wow.
You know,
Be here
just
as in, like,
I wouldn't be here. He would have, and he had spent 6 to 7 months considering taking his own
gosh.
life, dying by suicide. And it struck me that there was something incredibly powerful about getting a bunch of blokes together that were there to support one another. And it was more than just chasing a football around. It was more than just the physical benefits that you get and the mental health benefits from just chasing a ball around. It was fundamentally having a bunch of blokes that were there to look after each other. But it also hit me that we'd missed this for 6 or 7 months. We didn't see the signs, we didn't see the symptoms, we didn't see how much this guy was actually struggling. You know, we'd done a really good job of stepping over that white line and onto the football field, and we behaved like a team. We fought for one another, we supported each other. And for some reason, when
Yeah.
we stepped off, we'd completely missed how much this guy was struggling. And so, not long after that, um, I made a decision to set up a community for blokes on the northern beaches, just to be there, to walk, to talk, to run, to open up and feel more supported. And I did it around activities and events. At the time, and not long before that, I'd started to go through separation on divorce, and that was a 3-year journey for me. Probably one of the toughest things I'd ever faced. A mate of mine, Trent, reached out and he got me running up and down DY Beach in the morning, sometimes the afternoons, you know, fresh air, sunrise. Timbo, you need to get outdoors, you need to get moving. And that allowed us the opportunity to walk or run side by side or shoulder to shoulder. And it's less threatening, it's a little bit easier to open up. In addition to movement and exercise generating things like endorphins, which, you know, chemically within the body enables you to be able to feel better and more capable and confident to open up. And I realized there was something kind of powerful in that. So we used that in the community when I developed that in 2019. And it grew really, really quickly. You know, we started in DY, then Manly popped up, Bondi popped up, you know, Queensland started. And I realized that to have a much more significant impact, to take on the challenges of two things, you know, male suicide and male mental health challenges, and this inability for men to open up, this lack of confidence, this lack of permission or capability or the skills, the knowledge, or the brave space, right? And that's what we were creating. And so went down the path of setting up a charity, and that charity was established in 2021. So we're now nearly 4 years old. And I'm really proud to say we have, you know, 21 volunteers. We have 15 locations across New South Wales and Queensland now, including 2 in outback Queensland in Longreach and Buckholden, which we're incredibly proud of.
Wow, that's huge. Country towns
Yeah.
Having that type of charity, I can imagine how that'd be quite confronting, I would say, for a lot of men, especially in those environments. How have you found that that's been received?
We still face the challenge of blokes sucking it up, soldiering on, not talking. That traditional masculine stoicism. We don't talk about the way we feel, but it's, to be honest, the support of the women in the community that are getting the blokes to come along and join our regular events, encouraging the men. And it operates a little bit differently to our weekly meetups in CBD or coastal locations. And to give you an example, in a lot of cases, they're 100 to 200 kilometres out of town. So it takes time to get there. So they're not just popping in for a coffee. They need to wait till the weekends until they've finished the work on the farm. And that's typically the time they do their shopping. So, typical scenario is husband and wife come into town. Wife will go and socialize with friends, maybe do some shopping or grocery shopping, and allow or enable the guy that time to then go and meet up with the guys, go for a walk and talk, sit down, connect, and have a coffee. It's it's almost like, and we do have women dropping their guys off to our meetups and picking them back up again. The support that we get is the encouragement mostly from women, and that's where 60% of our blokes come from. They're referred to us from a female in the lives of these blokes that say you need to connect, you need to get out, you need to get moving, you need to create your own social connections and support networks.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different to coastal areas, but those conversations when you have them are significantly more important, impactful, and the guys get more out of them, but it takes just a little bit more effort.
Now, when we met a few weeks ago, and I wanted to discuss this with you, it's the statistics about men and suicide. Can you just, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that because that was quite alarming. I didn't even realize.
So we lose 9 Australians every single day to suicide. Seven of those nine, or 75% of the deaths by suicide on average every single day are men. That number is double
Wow.
the national road toll. It's the leading cause of death for men under the age of 45. And it's not just unique to Australia, because globally men are twice as likely to die by suicide as women. And when you look at the reasons for premature deaths for men, and we men obviously die about 6 years on average earlier than women. We
Hmm.
die because of more preventable deaths as opposed to unpreventable diseases and illnesses. And suicide's a big part of that. 90% of us know somebody in Australia who has died by suicide or attempted to die by suicide, and 1 in 6 Aussies will actually think about dying by suicide at some point in their lifetime. So it's not uncommon. In fact, the issue is it is far too common. And so
Yeah.
the work we do at the charity is not just about preventing mental health illnesses and disorders, but trying to prevent the instance of suicide for Aussie blokes.
And you've had a few men from your groups who've actually said, if it wasn't for this, like you said before, I wouldn't be here. That alone must give you so much motivation to keep going. The fact that you are making such a change in these communities. How does that make you feel? Because that, I just get goosebumps thinking about it because that is so confronting. We're talking about someone's life.
Yeah. It, the short answer is it's mixed emotions. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we do, but
Yeah.
it's also very emotional for the people that are, part of our community, that are the champion volunteers that are involved in these conversations, the immediate friend and network supports. And so it can be a really emotional journey. And there's been occasions where I've told stories where I've watched it unfold, where men have been at that point in their life on our chat and in our community groups, and I've seen lives saved, and retelling those stories, like, it's quite an emotional process. Even now I can hear my
Yeah.
throat closing up and my voice starting to,
Oh,
like, break a little bit, because it takes me back
yeah.
to that moment, that situation, the circumstances, how the men responded. And that's the work that we do: create the safety net of support, teach men how to dig in, encourage them and educate them to feel more comfortable tackling those more meaningful conversations, not biz and bullshit, scratching underneath the surface, and then knowing
Hmm.
what to do. If someone needs help and support, or if somebody is at a crisis point, what do you do? Where do you go? Who do you reach out to? So
Yeah.
it's been comforting to know that we've not only created new social and support networks, but we've been able to help tackle some of those challenges firsthand.
So how does it work? How do you educate these men? Obviously, it's a meetup, and when we met up, you said it's not like we sit around a circle and sing kumbaya and have a few
Yeah.
candles in the middle because everyone would run a mile. So how does it work?
In its most basic, we try and take away all the hurdles, give reasons and excuses for guys to turn up. So we have 3 programs. Our first program is what we call our community meetups. So they are weekly, take a walk and talk as an example. So this morning I went down and I met the guys here locally down at Manly Beach, 6:15. We go for a walk up and back. We jump in the water, we have a swim, we grab a coffee, and then we sit down and we have a conversation. There's conversation the whole time, but then there's a framework that's being built. Here's the exercise component. Here is the sit down and have a conversation, a chat and a coffee, and provide a bit of a brave space for guys to open up and connect. And for some guys, it's day one. For some guys, it's after 6 months.
Mm,
It's not forced. There's no, as you said, sitting in the circle and holding hands and forcing a conversation. It comes with you know, the development of rapport and trust and authenticity. And once that has been created, you feel comfortable to not only ask those questions, or if you ask that question and you don't get the response you think is is right, or you feel that there's something there, then it's digging underneath. It's digging underneath that, having the confidence and skills to do that. And that's probably where the next programs become more important. So community meetups just build the framework, give guys somewhere to go, something to do, someone to talk to and support when they need it. Get them off the couch outdoors, moving, connecting, and forming those social and support networks with other blokes in their local community. And then each month we run what we call a doghouse event, which is where we start to stack education and knowledge and tools and skills on top of that community framework. And so we have everything from, mindset coaches to performance and burnout coaches, the importance of gut health, science behind sleep. We have psychologists come in to talk about the process, how to engage, treatments and therapies for different conditions and illnesses, how to get help, how to frame conversations. And then every year in the communities, we actually conduct formal mental health education. So full day, signs and symptoms of mental health. What is the difference between good and poor mental health? How to identify them, how to have those challenging conversations, and then what to do, how to dig in, how to support, and where to go. And so that they form a social network, they develop the skills, and they harness those around mental health. So 3.5 years in, 3 programs. We try and keep it simple. We're blokes, all right? Don't overcomplicate things,
yeah,
otherwise they won't turn up.
that's right. Something you mentioned before, which I thought, yes, I understand this. You said we're not speaking face to face. We're speaking by
Yeah.
walking alongside each other. Yeah, because I don't think getting a man to go and sit with, say, a therapist and really open up is an easy thing to do. So I like the fact that it's in an environment that's quite relaxed and that person feels safe. But
Mm.
my question to you is, you're just an everyday guy. You've
Oh,
had an experience
thanks.
yourself. But you're an amazing guy who's doing an amazing thing. What
Yeah.
happens when you are confronted with someone who starts saying to you, I'm not coping. I don't know what to do. I mean, obviously you're not a psychologist. So
Nope.
how do you help somebody through this? Just the pressure of that alone, that would actually scare me. Like the responsibility of
Yeah.
it all.
And this is where, let me take a sideways step for a minute. This is where someone like an Are You Okay does a really good job of encouraging people to ask the question, to then get to the next step, which is having the conversation. They give you a really simple framework. but even their own marketing highlights exactly what you're talking about. If you can talk about the football, you can ask a mate how he's going. This
Yeah.
idea that it's so challenging to ask somebody about how they feel because, mental health and the challenges people face are not only silent, which means that you can't see them, but people find them really, really hard to talk about. 38% of blokes don't talk about the way they feel because they consider it to be unmanly, right? Like, so there's
Hmm.
challenge number one,
Crazy.
getting them to open up. But to get back to your question, the idea is that we give the guys the tools and some conversation frameworks and just get them comfortable practicing having more challenging conversations. So even in some of the workshops that we do, or the workshops that I do through Betterment, it's encouraging them to have more meaningful conversations. And it's just about being, well, you've got to care first, right? And then it's about being curious. If you have the capacity to ask questions so that you get a bigger picture, you can understand where and how to support, and you're not there to solve their challenges or their issues or their mental health illness or disorder. You were really just there to help and encourage support and action. And the idea there is, let me ask you some questions so that I can understand what's going on, so that we can understand how to either build a support network around you or go and get you the help and support that you need. And that might be driving them to a GP to go and have a chat, making the first appointment with a counsellor, or it could be driving them to an emergency department, or calling 000, depending on the severity of
Yeah.
the crisis circumstance. Or it might just be listening. It might just be asking questions. And it prompts me to think about a quote from the Dalai Lama, which is, when you're talking, you're really only saying something that you already know. But when you listen, you have a chance to learn something new. And so the idea then being that the more you ask open-ended questions, the more information you can get, the clearer you can get on how you can help and support. But none of us are superheroes, and the conversation might be hard and confronting,
Mm.
but your job is just to help and support. And the conversation you are likely to have, albeit a little bit uncomfortable, is likely to be far less comfortable than whatever it is that they are experiencing.
I think what I also love about your groups is that they're probably forming these great connections and friendships with each other, because a lot of men outside of their family and work environment probably feel quite isolated, might not have as many friends because they don't have the time to do those extracurricular activities. So, how amazing is it that they can come together? And I would suspect it's probably like minded men coming together because they're there also for a reason. So, have you seen this evolve? It must be lovely watching it.
Yeah, the short answer is no, right? Like
Oh,
there's no one common
yeah.
thread. The fact that isolation and loneliness has been identified by the World Health Organization as a major global health issue, concern, and crisis, and then we're getting ministers of loneliness appointed all over the world. That the government and researchers are doing a huge amount of review of this particular subject means that it's an issue. And we know that 1 in 3 Aussies that live with other people still feel lonely. The reasons why men come to us differ. So 60%, as I said before, come to us because they've been encouraged, supported by a woman in their life, a mother, a boss, a sister, a partner, a wife. Or the other 20% that come to us are because a psychologist or a counselor has said, you know what, there's only so much work I can do here with you within 4 walls for a 45-minute session every 2 weeks. And you still need the support of community, and you still need to be able to connect with other humans, and you need to get moving, and you need these other elements. And then it's the 20% that come to us because of a major life event. And that means that they've separated, gone through divorce, lost a job, or lost somebody in their lives. And so we're only getting 1 in 5 guys come to us off their own bat, which means that 80% of the guys that come to us are coming to us from other areas because they're being encouraged and supported to, which means, as blokes, we need a kick in the pants to actually get off our ass and go and do something that is ultimately good for us, that we know will improve not just our physical and mental health, but will make us feel more connected, more supported, prevent us from dropping down, as far if we are better supported and we have that safety net. So, to the women listening, thank you.
I mean, I think as women, we do that so well, don't we? We do. We connect so much better than a male to another male connects, and usually that's why the male and the female connect so well, because they probably don't feel as embarrassed, as vulnerable, and there's a lot of shame around feeling vulnerable as a male, which I think is so sad. And you have young sons.
Yeah.
How do you think they differ from, say, the way you were raised now? Do you think that there is definitely going to be an improvement? Because we obviously want to stop this stigma, don't we? Especially for our kids' generations.
Yeah, and there were so many little things that I kind of pulled out of your your question. So let me start with the back end of that, which is around stigma, and negative stigma around mental health is still a thing. So we need to change the narrative. We need to start having a different conversation. We need to make the connection between vulnerability and strength, as opposed to vulnerability being a weakness. So we need to start a narrative around mental health being treated the same way as it would our physical health. In fact, let's just treat it as part of our overall health and well-being, because that's exactly what it is. When it comes to young boys, and 1 in 3 men feel uncomfortable talking about their emotions, but that's actually significantly higher at 42% for younger men, which is 18 to 24. So as much as we're seeing more programs, more effort, a
Yeah.
high level of empathy and emotional maturity and support in younger age groups, I still have this real concern that if we don't work on intergenerational change and work with, let's, as an example, grandfathers, fathers, and their sons, if we don't fix it at the grandfather and the father level, then although we're
Yeah.
doing all this great work with the sons, they're still being role modeled a form of masculinity, which is teaching us that vulnerability is a weakness and not a strength. So with my 2 boys, it's picking and choosing your battles like any parenting 101. But
Yeah.
those moments where you can have impact, as a good example, if I want to dig into a conversation with my kids, you pick them up after training. The endorphins are pumping through their system. They feel pretty good. You're in a car. They can't go anywhere. You're not looking at each other. And those endorphins
Mhm.
pumping through the system help them just open up a little bit. In fact, in most cases, they're the ones that start the conversation. So for me, that's where it starts, creating that brave space. And then it's creating the framework around the conversation by just being curious, by just asking questions to get to know, what they think, how they feel, and then you can start to stack some of those subjects on top of it, so that you can kind of create a more balanced, holistic approach as young men to
Yeah.
masculinity and opening up to have conversations. And if you don't make it a thing, it's not. And if you just infuse it into how you interact, my experience has been it takes time, right? Like I was never like that. I distinctly remember not long after I separated, family dinner, always non-negotiable, Sunday nights, sitting down. I was telling the kids how difficult I was finding it being separated and broke down in tears. And my kids all looked at me, they looked at each other, and then they just started laughing. And I'm like, what is going on? And I said, why are you laughing? I said, we've never seen you cry. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Christ, I'm 42
That's
years old.
confronting.
My
Yeah.
kids are 6 and above, and they've never seen me cry. And I was like, right. So back to where you started, that was the first time they'd seen me be vulnerable emotionally, emotionally. So, I think we need to teach by doing. I think role modeling and the microscopes on masculinity, right, at the moment. So we've got an opportunity to be able to lift the lid, redefine it, and start to open up conversations around good and bad behaviors and role modeling.
I think it's so sad, and it's probably taken me probably till I was in my 40s to really start to understand that, wow, I look at the males, the prominent males in my life and think, yeah, they do find it really hard to be open. But I think when you get to this stage going through midlife, you start to reflect a lot on yourself and what
Mm.
you're going through. And that's why I really wanted to get you onto the show. It's because we're at a stage where we're finding not only are we going through changes, but we're looking at our partners going through them and also wondering, well, how are you feeling? Because they're probably trying to support us through, menopause and the joys of that and probably feeling that they can't open up. So the fact that there is a space like Mongrels Men that they can go, it's what advice do you give to the women in their lives? Or like, what can we do to help our partners or our fathers or our brothers that we might feel that they are going through something? How can we help them?
Yeah, I think in part because of what you said before, you are naturally much better at connecting, communicating, and supporting one another. It's identifying or continuing to identify whether or not that's something, if you've got a partner that they're not doing or doing enough of, or if they don't have something outside of their own work life, right, or
Yeah.
family life. And so, with 60% of the blokes that come to us being because of a conversation or encouragement with a woman in their lives, the simple message is to keep doing what you're doing. And we have a lot of, I've had a lot of conversations with wives, girlfriends, and partners that just say it's just something else for them to think about, to have to worry about. You drive the social engagement, you develop and maintain social situations and arrangements. The guys maybe a little socially awkward, maybe socially inept at organising. They're not very good at developing and maintaining. So we try and make that easier. But this idea of the mental load that women carry, in particular mothers, and if you're in your typical family unit, you're doing it all for the kids, for yourself, and the husbands as well. So let us take your mental load away by by getting the guys down to a meetup, and we can look after them in one of our community groups.
Fantastic. Oh, well, I love it. So, how can we also, as a community, support your charity? Because congratulations, by the way, on your partnership with Westfield Warringah Mall. That you've got a 3-year contract. That is just so amazing. So, we're going to be seeing a lot of your images all around the mall.
They're already there, and it encourage it. As much as I might get some weird photos and videos from teenagers doing weird things to posters down at Westfield, it encourages them to have a conversation with me. What's it all about anyway? What do you do?
Yeah,
What is Mongrels Men? Right. And so, although we focus on men because we know that that's where we need to have an impact, we need to focus, and we're only young, right, at 3.5 years. We can't be all things to all people. So, no, we don't focus on women, but we try and make better blokes so they become better fathers, better husbands, better partners, etc. And we try and set men up to be better role models for their kids. So we don't also focus on youth, and there's some great programs out there. We just want to keep focusing on men because that's where the numbers are most significant. That's where we can have an impact. And I'll be honest in saying it's a segment that I know and understand very, very well. So how can you support? We are a young charity that wants to grow, but grow for the purpose of having an impact. So in 10 years' time, I would love to have 2,000 locations across the country so that guys have somewhere to go, someone to talk to, and those local support networks. And we need to do that because, if 50% of our population is blokes and 50% of them will have a mental health challenge at some point in their life, and that's the number,
mhm,
that's the statistic, then we need to shoot big. We need to shoot for 1 million men a year. So if you know someone that has a couple of hours a week that can plant a flag, run and walk and talk, refer them through to us. And then beyond that, we're a charity. So yes, fundraising is part of what we do, but we also need support and volunteering in other ways as we grow. So that could be everything from, thinking about governance and compliance. I've got three regulators that kind of look over what we do, which is great. And the charity sector needs that. Or, helping us think about, marketing, positioning, strategy, building, operationalizing, all these things are in progress. But we always need more hands because it makes for light work, which means that our
yeah.
volunteers can get on and impact local community.
Yeah. No, well, I think it's an amazing initiative, amazing charity. I'm all about raising awareness that can help people who really need it. because
Mm,
at the end of the day, you don't want to struggle and you don't want to see your partner struggling. That is so hard, especially because traditionally men do not like to open up and they will shut you down the minute you try and start a conversation. So if you can provide a space for them that they don't feel like the spotlight's on them. And
yeah.
maybe, like you said, it can take up to 6 months for someone to open up. But hey, better that than, like you said, that guy saying, I probably would not have been here. That is amazing. I will leave all your details in the show notes. And for anyone who's interested in sending their partner, look at your website, follow you on Instagram. You're doing amazing, amazing
Thank you.
things. Thank you, Tim, for coming on and sharing your story. But I really want to know, what has this journey brought to you? Because you've done a lot for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's given me an opportunity for a lot of, I'm going to say self-reflection, right? Like, what's important to me? What makes me feel good? Not just physically by going on the walk and talks and playing sports and being active,
Yeah.
but emotionally by being connected and supported. And I'm lucky because I would spend 4 to 5 days of the week with bunches of blokes that I would consider to be my friends that I could reach out to, that I could support. It's encouraged me to do a lot more inward looking and then identify areas for development and opportunities for self improvement, which is not something I've always done, and it hasn't always come easily. And so I spent a lot of last year doing that, but it's also helped me reframe my purpose with my passion and now my profession. So, I did corporate for 27 years, and 20 years of that I masked through fear, shame, embarrassment, and ignorance, my own mental health challenges, like anxiety, daily panic attacks, depression. And so it took me a lot of time, energy, effort, and work to evolve and develop and reframe and develop the skill sets and knowledge to be able to overcome that. And so I want to
Yeah.
continue that journey. And that allows me to do that. It allows me to do it outside of a corporate environment, but also still positively impacts through the work I do at Betterment Consulting with corporates and communities.
Fantastic. Yeah, so important. Because I think that's where the patriarchy kicks in, isn't it? It doesn't work. I mean, we're always about patriarchy and females, but actually it really doesn't even work for some men because they feel so shamed. They feel like they have to be the strong one, the one that, keeps going regardless of what's happening. And, you've just got to keep it in. You can't cry because boys don't cry. So good on you, Tim,
Thank
for
you.
yeah, for stepping up and making a change. I love it. I love the work, and I wish you all the very best. Now, I
Thank you.
like to end all my episodes with an inspirational quote. Would you like to share one that inspires you?
Yeah, this isn't so much a quote as it is something that I used to see every single day of my life. And it was a message that my mother had on the fridge. And it was a small note that had been ripped off something that somebody else had given to her. And it's still on her fridge. And it has been for now, just quickly let me do the maths, it would be about 50 odd years. And I thought it was a bit weird and rubbish and didn't understand it. And as I've matured and got older and gone through my own separation and divorce and mental health challenges, now means something. And it was really simple, which was what we survive makes us stronger. And it's very easy to get caught in the here and now, to not play the long game, to look outside of our current thoughts and thinking. And I heard something the other day around research done by psychologists, which is that 87% of what we think actually has never happened and will never happen. And so, that idea of keeping focused and playing long game and thinking about how we can overcome these things, to me, is critically important. But the idea that we will go through challenges and they will teach us something good, bad, ugly, but ultimately they will make us stronger.
Yeah. Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So,
Yeah.
and it is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you and all the best. And for anyone who is wanting to possibly look into this for their partner, I encourage you to do it. Go to the show notes where you'll find all the information. Thanks, Tim, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.